People were reflecting back to me my greatness. They saw what I had forgotten because the shame had clouded it, reminding me that you're still brilliant, you're still incredible. And so over time, with having that mirror reflected back to me, I started to remember who I was.
Welcome to the Relaunch Podcast. And today, you are in for a real treat. Why is that? Because there are people that have relaunches that you know how much I love the idea of this midlife relaunch. What are we going to do? How are we going to make an impact? How are we going to change lives? Well, you've got to meet Shameca Tankerson. She is a trailblazing wealth code shifter. Love that wealth code shifter, everyone. And she is an achiever of the impossible goals. Her courage catapulted her business to number 310 on the Inc. 5000 list. She boasts a remarkable 1,836% revenue growth in just 3 years. Now she's on a mission to actually empower entrepreneurs like you to achieve massive wealth and build enduring generational dynasties. We're going to talk all about that. She has an incredible track record of turning the unimaginable into reality. Shameca facilitates these immersive experiences, workshops, conferences to actually help people surpass their income goals. We're going to hear all about this. And Shameca's methodology is really unparalleled because her results are unparalleled. How about that? And her power is undeniable. She's been featured in Forbes, NBC, Fox, and so many more. She is redefining what's possible in the world of wealth creation. And so, is there any doubt why I wanted Shameca on the show today? Welcome, Shameca. It's so great to have you.
Thanks for having me, Hilary. Listen, every time I hear those stats and those things being said, I'm like, that's me.
Into me. And I'm sitting here reading them and I'm like, okay, I need to know more. I need to hear some really amazing tips from you. But before I go into any of that, I want to know what your significant relaunch has been that has brought you to the place you are right now. What would that be? What has really stood out for you?
Yeah, you know what's amazing is living how I live right now, the life I get to live. If I were to go back a few years, I would be thinking, oh my gosh, there's no way I'm ever going to get here. Um, if I were to think about a significant relaunch, it would be my first business that I had. So I had my first business and I thought everything was amazing. We had gotten that business to multiple six figures and then ended up losing everything, losing the business, losing my house, needing to like sell my car, and then finding myself in the welfare office because that was like the last thing that I could think to do because I needed to feed my babies. And being someone who had already experienced multiple six figures, which at that time I figured that was the holy grail of everything. Like if I can get to six figures, I can make my life incredible and amazing.
Right.
Having multiple degrees, I never thought I would be in that position.
You are jumping way too fast ahead. I want to go back.
Yeah.
I had this first business and it just self combusted. What happened? What was the
Yeah.
catalyst that actually caused all of this to happen where you were like, I can't believe I'm here right now? Like this, how am I going to feed my babies?
Yeah. The world. I mean, it was 2008-ish, 2008, 2009. So if you remember around that time, not saying that I was old enough to remember, but if you remember,
Nor was I, but I'll try to. I'll play along with you.
the economy, we had the real estate bust and economy, and my business was in the real estate industry. So I was a mortgage broker at the time. And so all the banks were going under, and there just literally was nothing more that I could do but try to figure out how to maneuver my business within the industry that I was in with the skill sets that I had. So I tried very hard to like stay in the industry, but it was just very difficult because most of my client base were self-employed people and they had just gotten really strict on documentation. And so I couldn't work
Yeah.
and no one would hire me because I was making multiple six figures and now making nothing. And I'm like, I just need a job, but no one would hire me because they would say that I was overqualified
Oh my God.
for all of the jobs. So it was just a very, very difficult time. And if you remember that time, it wasn't just that industry. We actually had an economic, bust at the time. So people weren't even shopping at the time. Jobs were being lost everywhere. And so it wasn't just me going through the thing, but at the time it felt like just me. Right. And I literally remember the shame of walking into the welfare office and sitting there. It literally felt like everybody's eyes were on me because I kind of looked like I didn't belong as well, but it was all that I could do. And I remember telling the worker who was helping me that I just feel really out of place here, but this is all I can think to do in this moment. And she said, this system was made for people like you. And I remember her saying that. And while it was comforting on one end, it wasn't comforting because I'm like, it's not made for people like me. I'm not supposed to be here. Right.
Right. Right.
And I remember sitting there. I think the thing that resonates with me the most is that immense amount of shame that I felt like you shouldn't be here. How did you let this happen? And I really believe that was one of the sticking points for me where I got stuck in this cycle of trying to get out of that because I was so ashamed
Mhm.
that even though I was kind of pretending and going through the motions of trying to build my business, I almost didn't want anybody to find out where I was. It was like, buy from me, but don't buy from me because I've lost everything.
Mm. This is resonating so much with me right now. That shame. I had a company and there was a board member who did a Ponzi scheme with the company, and I had 63 investors in, and he literally took the company down. And
Mm,
at the time, I was fighting to save it. There was a huge amount of shame, and it ended up that he took the company down. And then a couple weeks later, the SEC, Security Exchange Commissioner, called and said, "Hey, I just want to let you know we're looking into this guy." And he ended up going to federal prison on a Ponzi scheme for
mm,
3 years. And that was the only time where it was like the shame turned into like, I'm okay.
mm,
But there are so, and I still have that like moment of like, right, when I think about
mhm.
it, I still have those feelings that come up. And I'm sure people right now, when they think about their own careers, there are moments that, especially if they're entrepreneurs, right? There are a lot of moments that are really, really, really challenging. And, you're barely able to make payroll. And then you have like a really great quarter, and then you have a really crappy quarter.
Yes.
You talk about this deep shame. How were you able to address it? How were you able to rise above it? You're walking into the welfare office and you're like, I don't belong here, but I'm
Yeah.
here.
I feel like it took a long time, but what was feeding me and fueling me was the people that I surrounded myself with. So I took risk. I, made any investments I could to reorient myself, re-educate myself. Um, got coaching in the moments where I could get coaching, sometimes at a women's business center where it was free, getting support. But what happened was people were reflecting back to me my greatness. They saw what I had forgotten because the shame had clouded it, reminding me that you're still brilliant, you're still incredible. And so over time, with having that mirror reflected back to me, I started to remember who I was. And then I was willing to come out into the open. And I think there's two pieces to this puzzle that shifted things for me. Actually, I'll give three. So the first one is um, remember when I look at it in hindsight, I remembered that even though I had that setback and that failure, it didn't change the value that I brought to the table. It didn't change who I was. I still had in my possession, in my knower, in my cellular memory, all of the experiences, the accomplishments that I had accomplished up until that point. If you think about $100 bill, if I put it on the ground and stomp on it and crumble it up, it's still worth $100. It's just a little bruised and battered, but I can still spend it. It still spends the same. And so just reminding myself and giving myself permission to own the value that I brought to the table, and really recognize that the battle scars, the shames, the disappointments, the failures actually didn't take any value away, but it actually made me more valuable.
Beautiful. That is such a great way to say it. You had that self-worth, the value still inside of you.
Yeah.
Just because of where you were at that time, you tapped back in to
Yeah.
when you were at that higher level.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
good. What's that second one?
So the second one was the people reflecting back to me. So I got
Oh,
fortunate enough to
yeah.
have a
Good.
coach
Yeah.
who he would ask me from time to time if I would sell inside of his business, and I would always say no, because this was
Mhm.
shame again. Like if I say yes to working in your business, then I'm giving up on my dream of rebuilding my own. And I finally got to a point where he caught me by a water cooler one day and said, "One more time, will you sell for me in my business?" And in that moment, I don't know what came over me, but I just said yes. It was the best decision I ever made because he really trusted who I was. He knew that I was really gifted at sales and I could do the job. But also, I got to see on the inside of his business. And what I realized is that there was nothing going on the inside of his business that was different that was going on with mine. He was talking to people who said they didn't have money too. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it got to show me something, but the level of trust that he gave me just kept reminding me. It was more fuel that remember who you are. You're
Mhm.
great at this. You do know how to support people. You do understand how business works. And so getting that reflected back to me, I was able to borrow his belief in the moment where my belief was waning. And that meant a lot.
Ooh,
It was a
that
quick
is
turning.
solid, girl, right there. Borrow from somebody else's belief system
Yeah.
when you've lost your path, you've lost your direction.
Hmm.
Oh, that
Hmm.
is so good. And so you said the value, the people, that reflective, and what was the third? I always like to tie it all back. You said it in such a great way.
I think I might have said what I was going to say for the third one already.
Mhm.
Um, because I was talking about remembering who I am.
Yeah.
I think shame, what I realize has been a reoccurring theme in my life.
Hmm.
The loss of the business just magnified it, right?
I
And
get it.
so having the courage to try again was super important. I believe that courage is like, for entrepreneurs, it's one of the number one personality traits, being courageous, that's required. I feel like every dollar that we make is a reflection of a time that we've said yes to courage, whether it's making an offer. And so I learned how to follow my fear in a different way. I do these things called courage experiences where I actually challenge myself, because what I recognize is that fear originates in the body, in the same place in the body, no matter where it's coming from. So, no matter if I'm jumping out of an airplane or riding a roller coaster or making $100,000 offer to someone for the first time,
Mhm.
speaking on a stage, um, going live for the first time,
Yeah.
that if I'm going to be fearful, it's going to feel the same way. And so, if I can practice walking in courage outside of my business, it will translate to my business. And when I started doing these courage experiences, I started to watch my revenue grow alongside of me as I grew as a person.
Oh, okay. So courage comes from the French, right? It's core, the heart. And I'm sure there's a Latin twist in there. Took Latin for 6 years, but I do know it was out of the French. Uh, and what I love about what you just said is it's like walking the walk, right?
Mhm.
A lot of times people have this thought of like fake it till you make it.
Yes.
And people have a lot of opinions on this one. I happen to believe that become the identity that you want in the future by being it today.
Yes.
Is that faking it till you making it, till you make it? It's being that person. It's embodying it. And what you're saying with the courage experiment, or experience is that you're doing exactly that.
Yes.
You're allowing yourself to be, filled with courage outside of work so that it directly impacts your work. I say,
Mhm.
growth. When you're growing, your business is growing. And that is so interesting. So I want to go, you've had this like massive, the shame is around it. What happened to after this gentleman said, "Hey, I want you to start to sell for me." You took it, you said yes, which is I think another thing that you should be adding on to your list. You
Yeah.
said yes, and then what happened? What I shared in the opening is what people only think they can dream of, and you've done it.
Yeah. So I remember the one thing I didn't want to do was be a sales coach or mentor or be someone who supported people with selling. But while I was working with him, what I realized from my own experiences selling in his business, that sales is a beautiful mirror. It's an incredible mirror for how you show up. It's a very powerful transformational tool because I was learning so much about myself, about how I was showing up in sales situations based on my shame, based on my situation,
Mm.
and was having opportunities to have that reflected back to me as I was working inside of the company. For instance, there was one particular time where I was making a lot of sales. I'd closed like 8 sales and I was super excited about it. And he asked me if he could have a conversation with me. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. He goes, wow, see you making sales. And I'm super excited about it. Like, yes. And he goes, I know also noticed they're all on payment plans. And I'm like, yes. And he asked me a simple question. He said, would you need a payment plan if you were to purchase this right now? And I was like, yes. And it hit me in that moment that I was projecting. See, he had been used to
Mm.
every person, for the most part, 90% of his people would pay in full. But when I started selling for him, everybody was on a payment plan.
I want everybody out there to hear what you just said. The people in your life, the people that are showing up as clients, the people that, look at them, see what is really happening in your life because it is a mirror reflection
Yeah.
of what's going on within you. So I got to ask you, all right, so once you figured out, oh my gosh, I would do the payment plan, what did you do?
It hit me like a ton of bricks. The next three people that bought paid in full. That's what I did.
I love that you realize I'm going to start using this story. This is so good. I'm going
Yeah.
to completely say, hey, you were on my show, and man, that is
Yeah.
so powerful. Okay. So you then got firsthand this ability to what I call a relaunch flip. You
Hmm.
changed the narrative. You
Hmm.
took what, I would do a payment plan and said, nope, I I'm going to pay in full. And then you got the other people to do that. So then you start to have more and more success. And come on, tell me about these numbers.
Yeah. So I started my own, like, to really like take this what I've learned in sales into business. And I start teaching people how you show up and lead yourself is actually what's showing up in your world. And we're using sales as a mirror to do this. And so it's been insane what has happened. But to go from, we ended up making my first six figures in that business around 2016. So it took me a lot of years to like let the shame fall off. Worked in my mentor's business for a little while. 2016, we did a little over six figures. And by 2021, I was on the Inc. 5000 list. So
Number 310.
yeah. And the
That
way
is
this
so
looks is
incredible.
even wilder. So my first six figures in business after rebuilding,
Mhm.
we're talking 2016. We're pretty much doubling our revenue every year. In 2020, I have my first six figure year. We crossed six figures in October of 2020. In 2021, I have a six figure month. And the following year, I have a six figure. I mean, sorry, I said a six figure, seven figures in 2020. In 2020, in 2021, I have a seven figure month, and in 2022, I have a seven figure day.
you know,
All things that I thought is impossible, all things that most people would think like, "You how could you even do that?" And it wasn't even something that I was
yeah.
trying to do. I feel like my soul, there was seeds planted
Mm,
along the way.
mm. But people listening right now, we're always hungry. I'm hungry to understand, okay, you had this massive growth. And, there's always that. It was interesting as you were saying that when I think back on that guy who went to federal prison afterwards, when I had the shame and I was trying to figure out what was next for me.
Mhm,
And I had to call my investors all, 63, there were 64, but one was an interesting one. But they all, I had to call them and say, this is what happened. Here's where we are. And I remember feeling a little bit like, how am I ever going to raise money again? How am I ever going to be able to do
mhm,
this? And my
mhm,
mentor said, what was the biggest year you've ever had? And I said, multiple seven figures and da da da. And they said, so that's inside of you.
mhm.
You're going to do that again and
Yeah.
again and again once you have it. But I want to know, when you had that seven-figure year and the seven-figure month and the seven-figure day, what what changes happened within you at each one? I call them the gates. When you cross another gate, what happens to you when you have those things happen?
So much. I mean, I would also go back to like a pivotal moment before doing the first seven figures that year. The year before, I'd met a gentleman who I ended up having lunch with, and he had been doing seven figures a day, seven figures a year. It was just normal for him. And I'm like, how do you do that? Like, where does that happen at? And I asked him, what changed for you that shifted you from somebody who was doing seven figures a year to being able to do seven figures in a day, even six figures a year to six figures in a day? And he said, that's easy. I had to change my relationship to what I believed was a whole lot of money.
Yes, God, I love this. That is incredible. The relationship, because he was putting that glass ceiling above him. He was saying that's a lot of money. Oh,
Hmm.
that is so good. That is so true, right? Who's to
Yeah.
say six figures is a lot of money? Seven
Yes.
figures, eight
Yes.
figures. You put
Yes.
that. So you heard that, and how did you encapsulate that and then bring it back to your everyday experience?
I feel like that was a seed that just dropped in my spirit because it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, oh my gosh, I have been acting like six figures. Because at the time, I was trying to have my first six-figure month. And I remember like it just dropped. And after that, I started having six-figure month after six-figure month. And I'd have a little break and have a six-figure month. And I'm like, okay, I think next year I'm going to do $1 million. So the year after I met him, we did a 500,000 in my business. And I knew that I had a cap. And a cap for me was I thought that I needed to, um, that I couldn't hold a large amount of people in my programs. That in order for me to,
That's really funny.
yeah, it
We
was like,
just talked
oh,
about this the other day. Yes.
I could only have 10 to 12 people, in this particular program, or my
Yeah.
power would be diluted, or that people wouldn't get the results that they wanted. And so I actually went on a journey to going and putting myself in rooms where people were holding thousands of people at a time and transformation was happening. So I
Uh-huh.
went on a quest. I went to a bunch of events. I went to people's programs just to see it and experience it for myself.
Mm,
The last event I did was March of 2020, right as COVID happened and things shut
mm.
down. And that's where I got my last seed. And again, just silent prayers, right? I wasn't even looking to do $1 million in a day. I believe that when he shared his journey, something inside of me latched onto that and said, we're doing it. We're doing
Shameca,
it.
you know what? I have no doubt somebody is listening and saying, bam, this is what I needed to hear. You often say that there are rules of playing big, and this is all part of it. And that top 2% do things differently to create massive wealth. What do you
Mhm.
think they do?
So we talked about courage already,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
I say this, the bigger I play, the bigger I win. The bigger I play, the bigger I win. I'm going to swing for the fences, right? So oftentimes we look around society and we try to set our goals just enough. Like think about this. If I ask you how much joy would you like to have in your life, what are you going to tell me? As
I'm going
much
to
as I
say, I'm going to say exponential. I'm going to say like unlimited. This is what I
yeah.
want.
If I ask you that about love, if I ask you that about peace,
Mm.
but if I ask that same question to people about money, they
Mhm.
say, "Oh, just enough to do this, just enough to do that, just enough for my family, just enough so I can leave something behind, just enough." Why not all the joy I could have, all the money I could have, all that? So I've learned.
Exponential, baby. I know
Yes.
Kristen, our producer who's doing this podcast with us right now, she's probably like, Hilary, no, no, no. She's exponential. Lifestyle of success, baby. That's what we're going for. This is so profound. I love your attitude. And yes, people, when you ask certain questions, they are, hey, this is exponential. Everyone wants this. But when they ask the other, that limiting belief comes up. How do you help
Exactly.
people through their limiting belief?
When it comes to money,
Yeah.
we play games. We play games. So the courage experiences are part of the game, right? I always ask people, this is my favorite question to ask. Would you like to play a game? Right? And so how much money would you like to allow in your life? Are you open and willing to play around with how much you can create? Because if you're playing a game, there's actually, I'm going to read this to you. Have you ever
Mm.
read A Happy Pocket Full of Money?
Let me see it.
This is an old version. It's red now. I've
Yeah.
had it for quite some time.
Okay.
So
I
this book,
think I have it, but it was a while ago.
I read this maybe 10 years ago and it was gibberish to me. I picked it
Yeah.
up 5 years ago
Yeah.
and I had a highlighter in my hand and it was jumping off the page. So next to my Bible, this is like my next favorite book. So there's page 37. This is David Cameron Jacondi.
Yep.
Be careful how you set deadlines for yourself. Time does not exist as an absolute. Quantum physics or spirituality and our understanding of eternity tells us that the only time that truly exists is now, and the only place is here. For example, imagine that you have a goal of becoming a millionaire or a billionaire in a year. Think about it this way. Why did you choose a year? It's a very arbitrary date or deadline. It's a mere grab a date. It is possible that the source can create that millionaire or billionaire outcome in an instant. Nothing is difficult for Source, God. So why set a random date for an accomplishment of what can be accomplished in the blink of an eye or at a time that is best suited for you that you may not have thought of yet?
Goes back to your upper limit. If
So,
we think something has to take a certain amount of time, oh, I can't make $1 million
yeah,
in a month or a day. It's got to take me a year, 5 years. And I love what you just read. Yes. Why put limits
yeah.
around the limitless?
So we look at business as a game. We look at money as a game.
That's so
It's just
great.
a game. How do you want to play?
Yeah.
Right?
Okay,
Do you want
I have to ask you because we're like I'm seeing the time is slipping by. Get it? But is it? No, because we're in control of how long this podcast is going to go. But you often are talking about power content and how companies master this process to make millions of dollars faster than they ever thought possible. Is this all part of what you're talking about, or are there other steps?
there's other steps. So we know that social media is a big thing right now and everyone wants to show up on social media and they're trying to figure out how to do it. And we figured out a way to show up on social media that helps us build know like trust, but also helps us to sell. And so power content for me has 4 C's to it. It's
Hmm.
connection content, credibility content, character content, and conversion content. So what it looks like on social media is like I'm just a human on social media who has a business as opposed to someone who's constantly yelling about my business, buy my stuff, here's what I offer, right? So character content
Yeah.
gets the right people to know me.
Mm.
Connection content gets the right people to like me. Credibility content gets the right people to trust me. And conversion content gets people to buy. The last one is the one that people mostly leave out. They forget to ask for the business.
That is so solid. That is so good. Everybody needs to go back and re listen to this. There's so many golden nuggets here that are so profound and useful. And I want to ask you, as you know, we wrap this up, you talked at the beginning about this perception of sales. And it was almost like, oh, no, I don't want to do that. There are so many people that view sales as slimy. I don't want to be that used car salesman. I don't want to be that person. What
Mhm.
do you say to them?
I think sales is a powerful transformation tool. I always tell people it's just a powerful conversation. It's the gateway to someone's yes. It's the gateway to someone's bigger vision that they want, the purpose that they want to live, the desires of their heart. And when you are the person who's guiding them through that gateway, you're giving them an opportunity to step into what's next for them. That's all it is. It's just one powerful conversation where you get to lead it and they get to choose for themselves, yes or no. I'm not the person who believes that we should call sales something else. And like, I do believe sales is service, but here's what I also believe. The truth will always outsell a lie. Sales is sales. It's been around forever. If I'm standing in the middle of a highway and a Mack truck is coming at me and I'm saying it's not a truck, it's not a truck, it's gonna smash me, right?
Mhm.
Sales is sales. And if you can just say, you know what, I sell because I understand what it means for the person on the other end, and I'm willing to be in the fire of transformation with someone as they're making that important decision for themselves, not attached to whether or not they say yes, you will become so much more powerful, and the amount of yeses that you will get as a result of that will grow exponentially because you're looking at it totally differently.
Yeah.
I'm just
So good.
the person standing at the gate, opening it and saying, would you like to come in? You get to decide for yourself, right? It's my responsibility to offer their right to choose, and they get to decide.
And the best part is that, and I've been selling, I've had my first, I had my first business when I was about 5 years old. I sold all of my mom's little trinkets out of our garage, unbeknownst to her. She didn't realize I was doing it. So I've always been in the business of sales. But
That's
what
right.
I've always said is when you believe so much in the value associated, going back to what you said, initially, that value associated with what you are delivering, the transformation, what the outcome is going to look like. It's not sales anymore. It's not sales. So I really want to know, Shameca, how can people find you, get more information about these incredible processes that you take people through?
So the best place, because I hang out on social media, because I teach people how to use social media to sell across every platform, whether Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. You can find me using at Shameca Tankerson across all of those places. And that's where we hang out. I also have a free community that I curated on Facebook. And you can connect with us there. I teach inside of there. We play games inside of there. We just had an amazing time playing a game because my birthday was Sunday.
Happy birthday.
Thank
Happy,
you.
happy. I love birthdays.
And I was just hanging out with a few people before we jumped on here, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, your birthday was so fun," because we were just having fun all day. I love fun infused into business. So if you go to makingmillionshappen.com, you can join us in that free Facebook group as well.
What are your three core values?
Oh my gosh. So my highest core value,
Yeah.
it bobs and weaves between communication, because
Yeah.
communication for me is like a high value. It doesn't matter how tough the conversation is. I
Mm,
value that, just communicating it out. It doesn't matter what it is. You can say anything to me.
yeah.
But then always also integrity. Like I just said, the truth will always outsell a lie. I'm always going to be in the truth of who I am. I'm going to
Yeah.
embody the truth of who I am. I'm going to speak the truth. I'm going to be for the truth. Um, and then I think finally it would be like love.
Oh,
I think love, it trumps everything.
yeah.
It's the greatest gift that you can give yourself. Love yourself, but then
Totally.
that exudes out into other people. And no matter who you come across, if you can just see people for who they are, meet them where they are, love them where they are without requesting anything in return,
Mm.
you can change so much.
Ah, Shameca Tankerson, thank you for bringing the love today because that was so powerful. I enjoyed it so much, and I know that everyone out there has gotten those incredible key takeaways. I call them
Mhm.
pearls. And thank you again because I knew this was going to be a huge conversation based on when we talked before, and it even like outdid what I thought we were going to do. So thank you again, and for those that are listening, again, we're just doing this. We're doing this
Yeah.
together, but make sure that you are sharing this with others that need to hear these relaunches and the important power behind them so that we all can become powerhouse of possibilities. And, Shameca really gave us some, the courage to kind of understand what we have inside of us. So now it's up to you. And you often hear me say, ready, set, relaunch. What are you going to do today? How are you going to take what you just heard and put it into the rest of your day? We'll see you next time. Thanks again for tuning in. If you like this video and want to get more like it, head over here.